I remember the first day he walked in he had to bend down coming through the door. I went, and when he stood up to his full height, I remember thinking, that's absolutely phenomenal. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
When people talk about The Princess Bride, they talk about the fencing, the fantasy, the romance, the unforgettable lines. But ask anyone who worked on that film what truly made it special, and the answer always circles back to one man. A man so big, so gentle, so strangely magical in his presence that even decades later, the stories about him sound almost mythical.
You know, everybody rallied around him. We just loved him. I mean, he was so smart and so gentle and sweet.
He was just a giant of a human being in every imaginable way, but particularly in the way of his heart.
I remember he used to put his hand on my head, and when we'd be outside, and it was freezing cold where we were, and it would come down to here. His fingers would come here, and it would cover the back of my neck. His hand was so big.
Andrei Rene Roussimoff. To the world, he was Andre the Giant. To the cast of The Princess Bride, he was something else entirely. Robin Wright still remembers the first time his shadow fell across the set. She was young, freezing in the miserable English rain, wearing a thin buttercup dress that offered zero protection from the cold. Every breath came out in a shaky fog, and she was trembling between takes. Then, out of nowhere, this massive, towering figure walked toward her. 7'4", 520 pounds, wrapped in layers of clothing that still couldn't hide the sheer size of him. He didn't say a word. He just reached out, placed his enormous palm on top of her head, and held it there. Robin said it felt like a sauna. Heat radiated through her scalp, down her neck, through her whole body. Andre was always warm, always sweating because of his size, and for her, it was like someone had dropped a miniature sun on her head.
You have a story about him wrapping his hand around your head.
Freezing in England.
Right.
And his hand literally would come down to here, and he would put his hot hand on my head to keep me warm in between takes. It was the sweetest thing.
She laughed about it years later, saying he palmed my head like a basketball. But in that moment, it was kindness, unexpected, quiet, beautiful, and very Andre. That gentleness was real. Everyone who worked with him describes the same thing. A man who could crush a skull with one hand, but never once acted like someone who knew that. Director Rob Reiner said he moved with a natural instinct, a performer's understanding of space and presence. Wrestling had trained him to communicate with his body, and he brought that same skill to the set. The truth is, Andre didn't need direction, he just needed room. But even though he was perfect for the role of Fedzik, it almost went to someone else. Liam Neeson once told the story on late night TV. He was asked to meet with Rob Reiner, walked into the room thinking he actually had a shot, only for Reiner to look him up and down and say, "He's not a giant. No hello, no meeting, no second chance, just instant rejection." Neeson laughed about it later, but the reaction shows how clear it always was. Fedzik belonged to Andre. The irony is that Andre himself didn't think he deserved it. He didn't see himself as an actor. He doubted his English. His lines were hard to pronounce, and when he auditioned, Reiner couldn't understand a word he said, so the director did something unusual. He recorded every one of Andre's lines exactly the way he wanted them spoken, put them on a cassette tape, and handed it to him. Andre memorized the entire script by sound, repeating the lines over and over until the language bent to his voice. He didn't just learn the words, he embraced them. And yet, beneath all the magic and laughter, Andre was in constant pain. His gigantism, caused by an excess of growth hormone, had grown into acromegaly, a condition that ravaged his joints, his nerves, his back. By the time they made The Princess Bride, he had already undergone major back surgery. Walking hurt, standing hurt, lifting anything hurt. So the stunts you see in the movie, most of them were illusions.
And then there was the time he had a little bit too much wine.
He passed out in the lobby of the Dorchester Hotel.
Right.
So he's just out.
Housekeeping game.
Rob gets a call. There's a, Gulliver basically washed up here, and he's fast asleep. And it's, people are going to be coming in at 8 o'clock in the morning for breakfast, and there's a 7'7" giant. They called a cab. They called it, it's totally true. And a Pakistani cab driver in a Renault pulled up, and someone said, "I cannot get him into my car. I cannot get that into my car. How do I get that into my car?"
The end. 25 years later, we're still talking about this movie. Why do you think that is?
Classic.
When Fezzik carries Wesley, it's not real. Hidden ramps and clever camera framing made it look like Andre had Cary Elwes slung across his shoulders, when in reality they were walking side by side. When Buttercup jumps into his arms, Robin Wright wasn't leaping. She was slowly lowered by wires into place because Andre simply couldn't bear the weight. But he tried. He always tried. He hated disappointing people. Christopher Guest, who played the villainous Count Rugen, shook Andre's hand every single morning because he desperately wanted to feel it again. His own hand disappearing into a palm the size of a catcher's mitt. He said it was addictive, like touching a living legend. Cary Elwes remembered something different. He remembered the moment Andre walked into the room for the first time. He had to duck, literally bend down, just to enter. And when he finally straightened to his full height, Cary felt something shift in the air. He'd never seen anything like it. None of them had, but Andre didn't want to be feared. That was the quiet tragedy buried underneath the jokes and stories. He once told Billy Crystal that he loved living on his farm because the animals didn't stare at him. They didn't whisper or flinch. They just saw him. And on the set of The Princess Bride, he finally experienced that same peace. Mandy Patinkin remembered the script supervisor asking Andre whether he enjoyed being in the film. Andre smiled, shrugged, and said he loved it because nobody looked at me. Nobody treated him like a sideshow. Nobody treated him like a freak. He was just Andre, a castmate, a friend, a member of the family. Of course, with Andre, there were moments of pure comedy too, the kind that became legend, like the time he let out a 16-second fart so unbelievably loud that filming completely stopped. People froze in place. Tools dropped. The set literally trembled. Rob Reiner was the only one who dared to speak, asking gently, "Are you okay, Andre?" And Andre just nodded, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes, and said, "I am now, boss." Or the time he passed out drunk in the hotel bar, something unavoidable when your tolerance is superhuman. He drank beer out of a pitcher like most people drink from a mug. His bar tab by the end of filming, $40,000. When he fell asleep that night, not a single person in the hotel could move him. Staff just wrapped a velvet rope around his body like he was an exhibit and let him sleep it off until morning. The cast adored him. They ate together every night. They drank together. They told stories, played word games, laughed until their sides hurt. Andre carried a quiet sadness inside him. He knew bluntly that big people don't live long, but instead of fear, he lived with joy. He cherished time, he cherished people, and those around him felt it. Cary Elwes said Andre had the wisdom of someone who understood life was short. He accepted that truth, but he didn't let it darken him. He let it soften him. He let it shape the way he treated others. He was a man who held the weight of his own fate, but still found the strength to lift everyone else's spirits. Even small encounters left memories, like the time Chris Sarandon introduced his kids to Andre, and they ran screaming because they had never seen someone so big in their lives. Andre didn't mind. He laughed. He'd lived that moment hundreds of times in his life. Or the day Cary and Andre were out in Manhattan together and realized they were being followed. They changed bars, changed streets, but the same man kept appearing. Finally, Andre explained he was an undercover cop assigned to trail him because one night earlier he had fallen while waiting for a car and accidentally injured someone nearby. The police weren't watching him to arrest him. They were protecting him from lawsuits, from misunderstandings, from the chaos that followed him everywhere he went simply because of his size. But on the set of The Princess Bride, there was no chaos, no gawking, no cruelty, only love. The cast still talks about him with a tenderness that feels almost sacred. They knew even then that they were witnessing something rare, a man too big for the world who somehow had the gentlest heart in the room. A performer who moved mountains, but apologized if he stepped on your foot. A giant who made everyone feel small in the best possible way. Safe, protected, wrapped in warmth. When Andre died in 1993 at just 46 years old, it wasn't just wrestling fans who mourned him. It was the people who worked beside him, who laughed with him, who were held in his shadow and found comfort there. The truth is simple. The Princess Bride would still be a great movie without him, but it wouldn't be the same movie, and it wouldn't be the same memory for the people who lived it with him. Ask them what Andre was really like, and they won't tell you about the legend. They'll tell you about the heat of his hand on a freezing day, the kindness in his voice, the gentle way he treated everyone around him, the laughter that shook the walls, and sometimes the entire set. He wasn't just Fezzik, he was the heart of the whole story, and even now, decades later, his castmates still feel the warmth of that giant hand resting softly on top of their lives.